We're going to be talking about the power of emotions. So I think that's something that obviously we all feel. I want to hear a little bit of what y'all said about something that made you happy or something that made you angry. Just a few, if anyone would like to share.
No.
You just made me angry. That's a moment of anger. I'm kidding.
When you were born.
Oh.
Because I had been in labor for 24 hours, so I was really happy.
Because big head.
Yeah.
That's true. Alan, oh, here we go. Let's go.
Mine's simple, but it's like just when I got my car.
Very happy. That's a good one. You got a good car, and I know you love that thing. I've seen videos. What else? Anyone?
Cars are also angry.
They can be. Oh, you'll see. I'll talk about that in a little bit.
My headlights went out yesterday. There you go.
Both of them?
Yeah, or no, the day before, both of them went out.
That's an angry moment. Brings happiness and sadness. But so emotions are something that we all have, we all face, and a lot of the time we wonder why we have a lot of these emotions. It's something that's everywhere in culture because it's what drives us, it's what makes us human. It's what God put into us that's a little bit of Him, so we get that feel. And a few things in culture, we see it everywhere. It's portrayed everywhere. A few places we see that, obviously Inside Out. It's a good movie. Who's seen Inside Out? It's a pretty good movie. And I think it conveys emotion pretty well. Another movie that, I'm just trying to think of movies and shows and stuff that convey a certain emotion. Another one that kind of conveys a lot of emotion in me is Whiplash is a good movie. Whiplash is a pretty good movie. But when I think of an angry movie, I think of Neiman and the drum professor at Fletcher. I mean, you see some insane obscenities and things. I mean, that's an angry movie. Angry movie. And another thing, if you know me, you know I love The Office. The funniest show, maybe the funniest thing ever produced. Every time I watch it, it's just hilarious. I laugh every time. And then they have one episode where it's been out for 15 years. I guess I can't spoil it yet, but you know what happens here. But you just see, it's such a sad moment. It's such a funny show. Emotions are when you really dig into what they are, it's such an interesting thing. How strong it can make us feel, how strong it can change how we see the world. Are there any places where you guys see emotion conveyed in the world? Anything you guys would like to share? Any movie makes you happy, show that makes you sad, a game that makes you feel a certain type of way, a sport, whatever it is?
I think I gained sentiments when I played Undertale.
I know you've told me about that game. Hey, no shame in that. And it made you feel a certain type of way. Yeah.
I'm serious. I did know.
Yeah, I believe it.
I got one.
Yeah.
Man United spent $57 million in a month and we're still the worst team in the league.
See, I feel the same way about all my teams. It's like, what are we doing? How are we still doing so bad after all these years? You know what I mean?
They can bring such joy too.
It can bring so much. Look at this. She could come up here and teach this.
Like one thing can do two, like him with the anger with Kentucky basketball.
Yeah.
But then he can turn around and I don't get as angry as you.
Well, I'll talk about that in a second as well. So you guys are going to get a treat today. So we see it conveyed all over media, but in every single Bible story, I could argue that there is something to do with emotion. It is what makes us human. It is us. And a couple of these stories that I just love, obviously Jesus flipping tables. That story as a kid was so strange to me. I was like, why is Jesus going in his place and just having like a rage monster attack? That's what I thought it was as a kid. I didn't understand it.
It looks very peaceful in that.
I know, doesn't it? He's like using the force, like Star Wars. The next one, King David dancing in the streets when they got the Ark of the Covenant. What I learned. That ain't it?
That ain't the right depiction of him.
Okay, no. You know what I read? I thought he was naked when he was dancing. I read that he was wearing clothes. It was just a weird translation thing. It's like, that's what I read. And I thought it was something interesting. But that's like the ultimate joy. If he was naked dancing in the streets, that's something I would never do. But that is a lot of joy, I can say, in a Bible story. Last one. Yeah, the last one, Elijah, we see in 1 Kings 19, he got to a point where he was so lonely that he was asking God to take his life. You see, there are just so many stories in the Bible where you just see so much variety of emotion and how it changes. It's just so many different scenes and how it makes us human. So today, I don't know what y'all think about emotions, but I think a lot in life. Why do we have all of these emotions? You understand why we feel love, why we feel happiness, feel empathy, but why do we feel the emotions like anger and sadness and fear when it feels like all it does is just bring just bad stuff in our lives? What's the benefit of these? So I'm going to dive a little bit into a couple emotions that I have struggled with in life, and I think that is a commonality between all of us. The first one is anger. Anger is something that honestly I would say I struggle with a pretty good bit. I've gotten better at, trying to hide it and not display it as bad. But these are probably the two things that make me the most angry in life. Sports, especially Kentucky basketball, and driving. Kentucky basketball, man, I mean, that brings out a beast in me that I didn't even know existed. I mean, it brings out, trying to bite my tongue during a Kentucky basketball game is impossible. I'm sitting there and it's the most painful thing. Same with driving. Driving in Athens it's crazy, man. When someone cuts you off or someone in front of you is going slow, it just ruins a day. It just ruins a day. And that's not something I'm necessarily proud of. I don't look at this, at my anger, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like an angry dude that's like, I'm being cool, and it's something I'm trying to work on day in, day out, and it's not something I'm necessarily proud of. And you see this story of Jesus. I don't know if he's really flipping the table. He's like pushing the table. I don't know how what actually happened in the story, but it did say he was flipping tables. But doesn't that show that outbursts of anger is okay because Jesus did it, right? That's not at all what the point of this story is. Not at all what the point of this story is. There is a difference between outbursts of anger and measured righteous anger. I'm going to read Mark 2:13 through 16, which is where we see this story of Jesus flipping the tables. It says, "It was nearly time for the Jewish Passover celebration, so Jesus went to Jerusalem. In the temple area, he saw merchants selling cattle, sheep, and doves for sacrifices. He also saw dealers at tables exchanging foreign money. Jesus made a whip from ropes and chased them all out of the temple. He drove out the sheep and cattle and scattered money changers' coins over the floor and turned over their tables. Then going over to the people who sold doves, he told them, 'Get these things out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a marketplace.' At first glance, like I said, this story was so strange and out of place. Like, why was Jesus, it felt like he was having a weird outburst of anger. But last summer, my dad actually, I think, was it just about anger, what you talked about? I can't remember what it was. But I liked how he highlighted the one part about how it said, Jesus made a whip from some ropes. You think, that's probably not something that is going to be a super quick task to do. Like, he's not just sitting there braiding a rope in 5 seconds and then just out of outburst of rage and anger, just destroying the people in this temple. I think this was a deliberate act. He was sitting there, he was braiding the whip, he was probably talking to God, asking, he's like, what do I do here? What do I do here? And he used his anger, his measured anger, for the injustice going on for good. I think anger can be a very powerful tool. We were given it for a reason. God gave us anger for a reason. I think it helps highlight injustice in the world. I think it highlights exploitation, hypocrisy. Think about this. I would understand why Jesus was so upset. If they were downstairs before church selling communion for $100, and they're like, "Hey, you can be saved if you buy this communion for $100." That's probably what Jesus felt. But unlike a lot of us, instead of what I would do is just be super angry about it at instant, he sat and he waited, and it was deliberate. It was very measured, and he used it for good. Anger is supposed to be rooted in justice, not in selfishness. It can be motivating, and I hope you guys can remember that. Another emotion that I think is huge is sadness. I'm very lucky. I have a lot of my own struggles, like I said. I do feel sadness, but it's not something that has overtaken me in my life yet. And I think it's like depression and sadness is something I've wondered about. Like, why is that a thing? Like, why do people feel such a weight where they can't even get out of bed in the morning? It takes just an insane amount of motivation to get out of bed in the morning. I've had some moments in my life where, not to compare like sadness or anything, but in my life, some of my saddest moments, in middle school, I made the team basketball team in 7th grade, and then 8th grade, I was like, sure, I was going to make it, and I didn't. And all my friends made the team except me, and it really hurt, and it blatantly, it did suck. It was not fun. And in the moment, I was just, kind of upset with God. I was kind of checked out. And there was a moment where I decided to lean on God. And I think that led to more involvement in the youth group here, which I think was huge for me in shaping me as the person that I am today. Another story in my life that I faced a lot of pain was I went down a path at one point in high school where me and my buddies were making some really poor decisions. And it led to a bunch of guilt and sadness, and it felt like I was disappointing so many people. And it led to, I was just beating up myself, and I felt like I was relying it all on myself. And kind of like what Rob talked about today, that like suffering can bring great moments of growth, great growth in relationship with God and in God's people. I think sadness points a lot to what we care about and draws us closer to his comfort. We all know the story of Job. I heard Keenan, didn't you talk about Job last week? I wasn't here, but I heard it was awesome, per usual. And it's hard to say I love the story of Job just because of how sad it is, but you see what happens to this guy. I mean, his life is ruined. It is completely ruined. He loses his family. He loses his property. His skin is just covered in boils. I mean, it's just what a bummer. I don't know what I'd do in that circumstance. But what you see at the end of this story is, at the end, after all this time of being faithful through all the hardships and struggle, we see that God rewards him new children, new property, and new health. And he may be like, weird, like, why wouldn't he just want all of his old things back? But God gave him all these new things, all these new good things. And I think that's a lot of what our journey on earth is like. We have this suffering here on earth, the old things. We lose these things on earth, these old things. But God, what he's going to do for us in the future is, if we're faithful through all of this, that he's going to give us all of these new riches in heaven that we can't even comprehend on this earth. And those new things that we're going to get are not even going to compare. They're going to be so much better than the things we ever had on this earth. Romans 5, 3 through 5. I don't think I have a slide for that. No, we'll not go there yet. I have a slide. I'm going to read off, Romans 5, 3 through 5. That says, "We can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know that they help us develop endurance. And endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our hope of salvation. And this hope will not lead to disappointment, for we know how dearly God loves us, because he has given us the Holy Spirit to fill our hearts with his love." Sadness stinks. It does. And I know people have it a lot worse. And I know that depression is a real thing that people struggle with. And it's hard to be like, it's going to be okay. But I do believe leaning on God in circumstances like that is huge. Getting through moments of struggle and sadness will build character. And like I said, it's hard to understand in the moment. I really do believe it is so hard to understand in the moment. But I think your relationship with God can grow exponentially through these moments. If you decide to lean on him, if you decide that this isn't just me, I am with God. A lot of sadness is feeling alone, but you're never alone. You're never, ever, ever alone. So, not yet. So the last emotion I'm going to talk about is fear, which is kind of a weird one. I'm in a moment in life where it's a big transition from being the kid in high school to an adult post-college, where you just don't really know what's next. Obviously, before college, you're like, okay, I'm going to live on my own. That's kind of scary. Now it's like, what am I going to do someday? What's my job going to be? I need to worry about my grades a lot more. They matter. That's high school, they matter, but college, it matters a lot more. Relationships. What are my future relationships going to look like? Are they going to change? Are they going to stay? Are they going to go away? Fear, I think God uses it for us as a protective mechanism. It helps us make good decisions and helps guard us against sin. I think when I was going down that bad path I was talking about earlier, there was a fear of,
Getting caught.
the fear of Brad in me, the fear of my father. But there is the fear of sin, the bad things that do happen. There was the fear of being caught. That was probably the biggest fear. But there is the fear of, you do feel bad after. Like you do something wrong and you're like, I don't feel good. God doesn't want us to sin for a reason because it naturally is not the greatest feeling in the world after you commit a sin. So I think that fear is a guardian against sin. It helps us guide our life. And it's not to be too overbearing. There's a point where fear can just control us. Anxiety can control you. And I think, like I said about sadness, that's just leaning on God and realizing that he has a plan for you. I need to realize that he has a plan for me. And it's not all what I want to do. It's what God has set in place. And I'm just going to end up fulfilling that plan. So fear can help us become a lot closer to God through leaning on him and leaning on his protection in times of the unknown. All emotions are gifts from God, so try to use them as such. Fear, sadness, anger. We were given these by God, and they do have a purpose for us in this world. Not just to commit sin, not just for me to get road rage or be super sad about not making a basketball team or being freaked out about what my future holds. These things are gifts from God, and they do guide me in day-to-day life. They can be so powerful when used correctly. Anger can help you feel injustice for others, for God's people, for anyone, injustice for God. And it can help motivate you. It can help move you to do things for the kingdom. Sadness can help you realize things that truly matter. And when you lean on God, it can help your relationship grow tenfold, 100-fold, more than you can even imagine. My biggest growth with God is through moments of sadness that I leaned on him and moments that I trusted that he had a plan for me. And fear can help you make good decisions and rely on God's plan. I think it really comes down to that. There are a lot more emotions out there than just these three or the ones I talked about earlier, but just realize lean on God in these moments of struggle. If you control your emotions and don't let your emotions control you, you will build your relationship with God and the kingdom will grow. I do believe that. I've seen it in my life.